Elena Martinez stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Grand Marquis Ballroom, champagne flute in hand, watching the Chicago skyline shimmer in the evening light. Tonight marked the 10th anniversary of Martinez Technologies, the artificial intelligence and robotics company she had built from a tiny apartment into a $12 billion empire. The ballroom was filled with investors, tech leaders, celebrities, and politicians, all here to celebrate her success. She wore a stunning emerald silk gown that cost more than most cars, her dark hair swept into an elegant updo, diamond earrings catching the light. At 36, Elena had achieved everything she'd dreamed of as a struggling immigrant child from Mexico. Everything except a genuine marriage. Ms. Martinez, the speeches will begin in 15 minutes, Jade Wilson, her executive assistant and closest confidant, appeared at her elbow. Jade's eyes held a warning. And, he just arrived. Elena didn't need to ask who. She turned toward the entrance and felt the familiar sting of humiliation, though her face remained perfectly composed. Marcus Chen, her husband of 5 years, had just walked through the ornate doors. But he wasn't alone. Clinging to his arm was Amber Sterling, a 28-year-old socialite whose only accomplishment was being born into old money and spending it spectacularly. Amber wore a red dress cut so low and high it barely qualified as clothing. Her platinum blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders, and she gazed up at Marcus with exaggerated adoration. The whispers started immediately. Elena could feel hundreds of eyes darting between her and the entrance, waiting for her reaction. Marcus had the audacity to look smug as he guided Amber through the crowd, stopping to shake hands and introduce his mistress as though he were the host of this event. "That absolute bastard," Jade muttered under her breath. "Say the word and I'll have security throw them both out." "No," Elena said softly, her voice steady. "Let him have his moment. He'll need the memory to keep him warm soon enough." She had known about the affair for 8 months. David Park, a discreet private investigator, had brought her photographs, hotel receipts, credit card statements showing jewelry purchases that never made it to Elena's jewelry box. Marcus had been spectacularly stupid about covering his tracks. But Elena hadn't confronted him. She wasn't the type to make rash decisions fueled by emotion. Instead, she'd done what she did best, she'd planned, calculated, and prepared. Marcus approached her now, Amber still attached to his side like an expensive parasite. He had the nerve to smile. "Elena, darling. Wonderful event. You've really outdone yourself." "Marcus." Elena's voice was cool, professional. She didn't acknowledge Amber at all, which seemed to irritate the younger woman. "You remember Amber," Marcus said, his tone almost challenging. "From the Sterling family. I make it a point to remember very few people who contribute nothing of value," Elena replied smoothly, taking a sip of her champagne. "If you'll excuse me, I have a speech to prepare." She walked away, head high, feeling Marcus's eyes on her back. Let him think he'd won. Let him believe she was too proud or too busy to notice his betrayal. He would learn the truth soon enough. Jade followed her to the backstage area. "Are you ready?" Elena pulled a small flash drive from her clutch, holding it up to the light. On this tiny device was everything she needed: forensic accounting reports showing Marcus had embezzled nearly $2 million from company accounts over the past 18 months, all of it spent on Amber, luxury vacations, designer clothes, a sports car, even a down payment on a condo. His digital signature was on every transaction. "I've been ready for months," Elena said, her dark eyes gleaming with controlled fury. "Tonight, Marcus Chen learns that you don't humiliate a billionaire and expect to walk away unscathed." The announcement chime sounded, signaling it was time. Elena took a deep breath, smoothed her gown, and prepared to destroy her husband's life with the same precision she used to build her empire. Elena remembered the day she met Marcus Chen with painful clarity. She had been 29, working 18-hour days in a cramped office with 3 employees, trying to secure funding for her AI algorithm that would revolutionize robotics. Marcus had been charming, attentive, and seemingly supportive of her ambitions. That he was a mid-level marketing consultant, handsome in a conventional way with his sharp suits and practiced smile. When he pursued her, Elena had been flattered. No one had paid attention to the exhausted entrepreneur who lived in yoga pants and survived on coffee and instant noodles. Their courtship was brief. Marcus proposed after 6 months, and Elena, lonely and craving companionship amid the chaos of building her company, said yes. She convinced herself it was love. Looking back, she realized she had been too tired and too focused on her business to see the warning signs. The wedding was simple, a city hall ceremony with a handful of friends. Elena returned to work the next day, closing a crucial deal that would value her company at $50 million. Marcus had been impressed, suggesting he could help with marketing strategy. Elena, wanting to include her husband in her success, created a position for him, Director of Brand Relations. It was a mistake she would regret for years. As Martinez Technologies grew, 50 million became 200 million, then $1 billion, then $5 billion. Marcus changed. The supportive husband disappeared, replaced by someone who felt entitled to Elena's success. He began making comments about their money, about how we built this company, conveniently forgetting that every patent, every algorithm, every breakthrough came from Elena's mind. He started attending fewer company events, claiming he was tired of being Mr. Martinez. He bought expensive cars without consulting her. He joined exclusive clubs and took golf trips with wealthy friends, always charging it to company accounts. Elena buried herself deeper in work, telling herself that all marriages had rough patches. She was so focused on her company's expansion into Asian markets, on developing new AI applications, on managing thousands of employees, that she didn't notice when Marcus stopped coming home some nights. The truth came 8 months ago on a Tuesday afternoon. David Park, the private investigator, sat across from her desk and laid out photographs like a deck of cards. Marcus and Amber at restaurants. Marcus and Amber entering hotels. Marcus and Amber shopping on Michigan Avenue, his arm around her waist, kissing her in doorways. How long? Elena had asked, her voice hollow. At least a year, probably longer, David replied gently. Ms. Martinez, there's more. He showed her the financial records. Marcus had been systematically stealing from the company, approving fraudulent expense reports, creating fake vendor accounts, and funneling money into his personal accounts. Almost $2 million, all of it spent on Amber, designer handbags that cost $30,000. A red Maserati. First-class tickets to Paris, Monaco, and Bali. A luxury condo in Lincoln Park that Marcus had put in Amber's name. He'd even bought her a custom diamond bracelet that cost more than most people's houses. Elena had sat in her office for hours after David left, staring at the evidence. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Instead, she began planning. She contacted her attorney, Sarah Kim, who specialized in high-net-worth divorces. She had forensic accountants comb through every transaction. She documented everything meticulously. She changed passwords, secured her assets, and prepared for war, but she didn't confront Marcus. Not yet. She wanted him to feel secure, arrogant, untouchable. She wanted him to bring Amber to this gala, to parade his mistress in front of Elena's colleagues and friends. She wanted him to have the audacity to humiliate her publicly, because Elena Martinez understood that revenge wasn't just about winning, it was about timing. Over those 8 months, she watched Marcus grow bolder. He stopped pretending to work, spending most days at Amber's condo. He made passive-aggressive comments about Elena being married to her company. He suggested she was frigid and emotionally unavailable. Elena absorbed it all silently, letting him believe she was too proud or too oblivious to see what was happening. She played the role of the workaholic wife who didn't notice her husband's affair, but she noticed everything. She noticed when he bought Amber a puppy and charged the veterinary bills to the company. She noticed when he used the company jet to fly Amber to New York for shopping trips. She noticed when he started wearing cologne Amber had given him, a scent that made Elena's stomach turn. And tonight, as she stood backstage preparing to give her speech, Elena knew that every moment of patience had been worth it. Marcus had handed her everything she needed to destroy him, wrapped up with a bow. "Ms. Martinez?" Jade touched her arm. "It's time." Elena nodded, smoothing her gown one final time. She could hear the crowd beyond the curtain, the murmur of conversation, the clink of champagne glasses. Marcus was out there somewhere, probably whispering sweet nothings to Amber, believing he'd gotten away with everything that he was about to learn a very expensive lesson about underestimating Elena Martinez. The ballroom erupted in applause as Elena took the stage. Spotlights illuminated her, and she stood at the podium with the confidence of someone who had built an empire through sheer brilliance and determination. Behind her, massive screens displayed the Martinez Technologies logo and images of their groundbreaking AI robotics. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Elena began, her voice warm and commanding. 10 years ago, I started this company in a 500-square-foot apartment with nothing but an idea and determination. Tonight, Martinez Technologies employs over 15,000 people across 23 countries and has changed the landscape of artificial intelligence and robotics forever. The crowd applauded again. Elena saw Marcus near the back, Amber still clinging to him, both holding champagne flutes. Marcus looked bored, checking his phone. He probably thought this was just another corporate speech he'd have to endure. "Tonight, I'm thrilled to announce several major developments," Elena continued. "First, Martinez Technologies has acquired quantum dynamics, expanding our reach into aerospace applications. This $3 billion acquisition positions us as the leader in AI-powered space exploration technology." The room buzzed with excitement. Tech reporters were already typing furiously on their devices. Elena saw Marcus look up, suddenly interested. $3 billion was a lot of money, even for him to comprehend. "Second, we've partnered with the European Space Agency and 3 major universities to develop the next generation of exploratory robotics. This partnership, valued at $1.8 billion over 5 years, will revolutionize how we explore our universe." More applause. Elena paused, taking a sip of water. This was the moment. She glanced at Jade standing in the wings, who gave her an encouraging nod. "These announcements represent not just business success, but personal transformation," Elena said, her tone shifting slightly. "Because building something meaningful requires removing obstacles. It requires cutting away the parts that drain resources without contributing value." She clicked the remote in her hand. The screens behind her changed, displaying a new slide, restructuring and new beginnings. "Which brings me to my final announcement," Elena said, her dark eyes finding Marcus in the crowd. "Effective immediately, I am divorcing my husband, Marcus Chen, and he is being terminated from his position at Martinez Technologies." The ballroom went silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the marble floor. Marcus's face went from confused to pale in seconds. Amber's mouth opened in shock. "Over the past 18 months, Mr. Chen has embezzled approximately $1.9 million from company funds," Elena continued calmly, as if discussing quarterly earnings. "He created fraudulent expense reports, approved fake vendor payments, and systematically stole from the company that employed him." The screens changed again, displaying financial records, bank statements, and purchase receipts. Every transaction was highlighted, dated, and documented with Marcus's digital signature. "These funds were used to maintain an extramarital affair with Miss Amber Sterling," Elena gestured vaguely toward where they stood. "Including purchasing a vehicle, luxury goods, international travel, and real estate, all charged to Martinez Technologies." Security guards were already moving toward Marcus. He tried to speak, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Elena, wait, this is a misunderstanding, it's Ms. Martinez," Elena corrected coldly. "And there's no misunderstanding. I have 18 months of documented evidence, including communications where you discussed how to hide these transactions. My legal team has already filed criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud." The district attorney's office will be in contact with you tomorrow morning. You can't do this. Marcus finally found his voice, trying to push through the crowd toward the stage. Security intercepted him. You vindictive bitch. I helped build this company. You contributed nothing, Elena said, her voice cutting through his protests like ice. You were an employee who stole from his employer and betrayed his wife. Now you're neither an employee nor a husband. You're simply a defendant. Amber had disappeared into the crowd, apparently realizing that associating with Marcus was no longer socially advantageous. Marcus struggled against the security guards as they escorted him toward the exit. I'll destroy you, he shouted. I'll take everything in the divorce. Actually, you'll take nothing, Elena replied. We had a prenuptial agreement that you signed, which includes a morality clause. Infidelity and criminal activity void any financial claims. My attorney will be sending the papers tomorrow. You have 30 days to vacate the residence. The security doors closed behind Marcus, muffling his protests. The ballroom remained silent for a moment before someone started clapping. Then another person joined, and another, until the entire room was applauding. Elena stood at the podium, feeling lighter than she had in years. She had just publicly destroyed her husband's reputation, his career, and his financial security. Some might call it cruel. Elena called it justice. Now, she said, smiling genuinely for the first time all evening, let's celebrate what really matters: innovation, integrity, and the incredible future we're building together. Enjoy the evening. 3 months after the gala, Elena stood in her corner office watching snow fall over Chicago. The scandal had dominated business news for weeks, but public opinion had firmly sided with her. Marcus Chen became a cautionary tale about greed and betrayal. He'd been charged with multiple felonies, and his legal fees were bankrupting him. Amber had immediately distanced herself, publicly claiming she'd been deceived and had no idea about Marcus's crimes. No one believed her. Elena had moved on. Her company's stock had actually risen after the scandal, investors appreciating her decisive action and transparency. She'd thrown herself into the quantum dynamics merger and the space exploration partnership. That's how she'd started working closely with Dr. James Rivera. James was the chief aerospace engineer at Quantum Dynamics, a 40-year-old prodigy who had designed propulsion systems for 3 major space agencies. He was brilliant, focused, and had a quiet intensity that Elena found refreshing. Unlike Marcus's loud arrogance, James's confidence came from genuine expertise. Their first meeting had been purely professional, a strategy session about integrating Quantum's technology with Martinez's AI systems. But Elena had noticed how James listened carefully when she spoke, asked intelligent questions, and treated her like an intellectual equal rather than just a wealthy CEO. He had kind brown eyes, graying hair at his temples, and a slight accent from his Puerto Rican heritage. He wore simple clothes, usually button-down shirts and khakis, and drove a modest car. When Elena mentioned meeting for dinner to discuss the project, he'd suggested a family-owned Puerto Rican restaurant in his neighborhood rather than an expensive downtown venue. Over arroz con gandals and tostons, they'd talked about orbital mechanics, AI learning algorithms, and the future of space exploration. Then the conversation drifted to personal topics. James told her about losing his wife to cancer 5 years ago, about how he'd buried himself in work to cope with grief. I understand that impulse, Elena had said softly. Using work to avoid feeling. Does it work? James asked. No, Elena admitted. It just delays the inevitable. They'd started meeting regularly after that, ostensibly to discuss the project but really because they enjoyed each other's company. James never asked about her divorce, never pried into her personal life, never made her feel like she needed to explain or justify herself. One evening, they were working late in Elena's office, reviewing propulsion designs, when James looked up from his laptop. Can I ask you something personal? Of course, Elena said, intrigued. Why are you still working at 9 p.m. on a Friday? The merger is going perfectly. You could take a night off. Elena hesitated. I suppose I'm still learning how to have a life outside of work. For so long, work was safe. Predictable. It couldn't betray me. And now? James asked gently. Now I'm trying to remember what it's like to trust someone, Elena admitted, surprised by her own honesty. James set down his laptop and moved to sit beside her on the leather couch in her office. He didn't touch her, just sat close enough that she could feel his warmth. Trust is terrifying, he said. After Maria died, I thought I'd never let anyone in again. It seemed easier to be alone than to risk that kind of pain. What changed? Elena asked. I realized that closing myself off wasn't protecting me. It was just another form of dying, James said. And then I met someone who made me want to try again. Elena's heart was racing. James, I know this might be complicated, he said quickly. You're my boss, technically. And you just went through a terrible divorce. I'm not trying to pressure you into anything. I just needed you to know that I care about you. Not as my CEO, not as a brilliant entrepreneur, but as Elena. The woman who makes terrible coffee in her office at midnight and gets excited about satellite telemetry and has the most beautiful smile I've ever seen. Elena felt tears prickling her eyes. I'm scared, she whispered. What if I'm wrong again? What if you're not? James countered. What if this is real? He reached for her hand slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers intertwined with hers, warm and steady. I'm not Marcus, James said firmly. I don't want your money. I don't want to be Mr. Martinez. I have my own career, my own accomplishments. I want you, Elena. The woman who came from nothing and built everything. The woman who's brilliant and fierce and kind. That's who I see. Elena looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity. No calculation, no hidden agenda, just genuine affection. I'd like to try, she said softly. If you're patient with me. I've waited 5 years to feel anything again, James smiled. I can be patient. He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to stop him. When their lips met, it was gentle and careful, a question rather than a demand. Elena felt something unlock inside her chest, something that had been frozen since the night she discovered Marcus's betrayal. When they pulled apart, James rested his forehead against hers. No pressure, he whispered. We'll go as slow as you need. Thank you, Elena breathed. They sat together in comfortable silence as snow continued to fall outside, two people who had been broken by betrayal and loss, cautiously building something new. 6 months after that first kiss, Elena felt like a different person. The Ice Queen persona she'd adopted after Marcus had slowly thawed, replaced by someone more open, more willing to be vulnerable. Her relationship with James had developed slowly and organically. They'd gone on actual dates, museums, concerts, quiet dinners where they talked for hours. James had met her mother and charmed her completely by speaking Spanish and asking about her childhood in Mexico. Elena had visited James's family in San Juan, where his sisters had welcomed her with warmth and acceptance. The professional collaboration had been equally successful. The Quantum Martinez partnership was revolutionizing aerospace AI, and they just secured a contract with NASA for the Mars exploration program. James had moved his office to Martinez Technologies headquarters, though they maintained strict professionalism at work. It was a Saturday morning, and they were in Elena's home, the new downtown loft she'd bought after selling the house she'd shared with Marcus. James was making breakfast while Elena worked on her laptop at the kitchen island. You know you're allowed to not work on weekends, James said, sliding a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of her. Says the man who was reviewing telemetry data at 6 a.m., Elena retorted, but she closed her laptop and smiled at him. James had just sat down when Elena's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her expression hardened. What is it? James asked, concerned. Email from Marcus, Elena said flatly. Subject line says, "Please read." "You don't have to read it," James said gently. But curiosity won. Elena opened the email and read aloud. "Elena, I know I don't deserve your time or attention, but I need to try. I've spent 6 months in therapy, dealing with my actions and my complete failure as a husband. I was jealous of your success. I felt emasculated by your brilliance. Instead of dealing with my own insecurity, I tried to tear you down and take what wasn't mine. I betrayed you in every way possible. I'm not asking for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now how incredible you are and how badly I destroyed the best thing in my life. I hope you found happiness. You deserve it more than anyone. Marcus." Elena deleted the email without responding. "Are you okay?" James asked. "I'm fine," Elena said, and she meant it. "A year ago, that email might have affected me. But now?" She shrugged. "Marcus is irrelevant to my life. He made his choices, and he's living with the consequences. I've moved on." "Completely moved on?" James asked with a small smile. Elena stood and walked around the island to where James sat. She wrapped her arms around his neck, looking into his warm brown eyes. "Completely," she confirmed. "Marcus taught me what I don't want. You've shown me what I do want, someone who values my mind as much as my company, who challenges me intellectually, who supports my ambitions without feeling threatened by them." "I have something I want to discuss," James said, suddenly serious. "And I want you to know there's absolutely no pressure. It's just an idea." "Now you're making me nervous," Elena said, but she stayed in his embrace. "I've been thinking about starting my own venture," James said. "A specialized firm that develops AI-powered spacecraft systems. It would complement Martinez Technologies without competing, and it would give me complete creative control over my designs." "That sounds incredible," Elena said enthusiastically. "You should definitely do it." "I want to," James continued, "but only if you're comfortable with it. I don't want you to think I'm using our relationship to build my own empire or competing with you or—" Elena silenced him with a kiss. "James, I would never think that. You're one of the most ethical people I know. If you want to start your own company, I'll support you however I can, advice, connections, whatever you need." "Actually," James said, pulling a folder from his briefcase nearby, "I was hoping for more than advice. I want you to be my partner. Not just financially, though I'd love your investment. But strategically, creatively, building something together as equals." He opened the folder, showing her detailed business plans, technical specifications, financial projections. "I've been working on this for months. I've already secured initial funding from several sources, so I'm not dependent on you. But I think our combined expertise could create something revolutionary." Elena studied the documents, her business mind already analyzing the opportunity. The projections were conservative but promising. The technology was genuinely innovative. And the idea of building something with James, of being true partners in every sense, was appealing. "What would you call it?" she asked. "Rivera Aerospace," James said. "Keeping our names separate, keeping our companies separate, but collaborating where it makes sense. You maintain Martinez Technologies, I build Rivera Aerospace, and together we push the boundaries of what's possible." "I love it," Elena said genuinely. "Not just as an investment, but as a partnership between equals. That's what I always wanted but never had with Marcus, someone who wants to build beside me, not live off me." "Is that a yes?" James asked hopefully. "That's a yes to the business partnership," Elena said. "But I have a condition." "Anything," James said. "Move in with me," Elena said. "Not because I need you here, but because I want you here. Because I'm tired of saying goodbye at the end of every evening. Because I'm ready to build a life with you, not just a business." James's smile was radiant. I was hoping you'd ask. I already gave notice on my apartment. Presumptuous, Elena teased. Optimistic, James corrected, pulling her closer. There's a difference. They kissed again, deeper this time, filled with promise and possibility. When they finally pulled apart, Elena rested her head against James's chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me," Elena said. "Not my money, not my company, not my success. Just me. The girl from Mexico who wanted to change the world and somehow managed to do it." "You don't need to thank me for that," James said, stroking her hair. "Loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done." Outside, the Chicago skyline stretched toward the horizon, full of possibility. Elena had learned the hard way that money couldn't buy loyalty or love. But she'd also learned that betrayal didn't have to destroy her. Sometimes, the worst experiences led to the most important lessons. Marcus had shown her what she didn't want. James was showing her what she did want: authenticity, respect, partnership, and genuine connection. As they stood in her kitchen, planning their future together, Elena realized that true wealth wasn't measured in billions or buildings or business empires. It was measured in trust, in shared dreams, in finding someone who valued your heart as much as your mind. She had finally found something more valuable than all her billions combined. She had found home.